Do it for more people? Or do we just start? There's 3 people online. Probably wait till like 6:05. Usually there's like some person that just got out of class. Shit, I'm gonna grab some water. I'm thirsty. You guys can get back. We will start. How many people we got online? We got a couple. Recording. All right, welcome. Be sure to click the link in Discord to attend. That attendance link goes through. It actually shows that we have people that are showing up. Got a couple announcements. There's a cybersecurity competition coming up in April. That's open to anyone that wants to do it. There's 20 spots available for students, which is a whole bunch more than the five-member team we have. So if you're just interested to see like what the competitive CTF kind of stuff is, or if you just want to learn more, you got plenty of time to prepare for it because it's April 20th. And so yeah, there's time to think about that. Hit me up on Discord if you're interested. I'll be able to send you more details that way. Oh, and our A+ cert study thing, that starts tomorrow at 7:30. We're gonna be doing it online because again, we got lots of commuters and not many people want to like drive up here or wait around here until like 7:30, which is late. So it's gonna be online. We'll be using the Discord voice channel and like the text channel to like share resources and like, I'm here, I'm having trouble with this, I don't quite understand, study group kind of stuff. So today, and this month, we'll be covering wireless security. So I've got routers that are hidden behind this box, and we'll be poking holes at them. We're gonna go in order of like linear time. So from the beginning, know your history. So we're gonna go through the history of Wi-Fi security. So day one, like today, is just gonna be about like WEP and that kind of stuff, and then next week WPA2, week after that WPA3, and so we're all up to date. And cover other technologies that are like easily vulnerable, like WPS, which is a feature for WPA. So that'll be covered both next week. So in the beginning, there was no form of wireless security. You just had an access point. You plugged in internet hose, and it gave out internet radio, and your device could talk to it. Devices said, "Yo, let me in." Access point says, "Okay," and then client says, "All right, I'm connected." Client goes, "All right, cool." Access point goes, "All right, cool." It's just four-way handshake. It just asks, gives you access, and then it says, "Okay, I'm like actually connected to the network," and then sends out another acknowledgement. Pretty straightforward, but people in apartments and stuff don't want their neighbors stealing all their internets, so some form of wireless security had to be made. So in the same, very soon, there wasn't open systems for very long. I think just like a year. So along comes WEP, Wired Equivalent Privacy. That's its name. It didn't really succeed at providing wired equivalent privacy, but it was made in '97 just to provide general security to Wi-Fi networks. Essentially, it kind of just acted as like a no trespass because it was very easy to get around it. So this was the late '90s. It wasn't implemented very well. It was not implemented with security in mind. And basically the core problem of WEP is in its encryption, it uses a stream cipher, which is fast because it's designed for like streaming, so like streaming data. But if there was a desync to where like if the client device was trying to talk to the access point and like you're walking around because it's a laptop or something and you go behind a wall and packet didn't reach the client, the whole entire stream would be out of sync. And so every single packet of data after that desync would just not reach the client. So that kind of sucked. That wasn't a very good idea. So they patched that by having the access point sync with the client every single packet. So rather than have synchronization be changed to connect, like on connect, to where we would just sync up when the client actually wants to connect to the access point. That synchronization would happen like every single time data was transferred. And so that general synchronization still had like the master key exposed into it. So when we go into WPA, we'll be talking about four-way handshakes and how in a way you can still get the master key from that four-way handshake. But for WEP, like the key is being exposed just back and forth in every single dang packet, which is, it's not very good. And so that was just a patch for the bad streaming cipher to prevent desyncs. And so that's like the core of why it's insecure. It's just a huge attack surface by just exposing the password. Now it's not the master key isn't exposed like in plain text. It's not just visible in the packet. It uses something called an initialization vector to obfuscate, kind of like encrypt said master key, but it's short. It's only 24 bits, which, you know, at the time this was like 97, so they could have afforded a little bit of a longer initialization vector, but 24 bits is what they went with. And the web key was also only 40 bits. So both of those things were very, 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 very short. And because they're short, that means they could have been brute forced pretty easily. So in practice, a lot of modern attacks, of course, like in 2000 and stuff, it wasn't this easy, but there's been certain techniques developed throughout the ages. And so nowadays, like, it only requires like about 12,000 frames or 12,000 packets between client and access point to actually crack the WEP key. Some vendors supplied, like at the beginning, WEP was just 40 bits. And then it was increased to 104, and some vendors even had 256-bit keys. But genuinely speaking, the length doesn't really matter because it's still being exposed in every packet along with the IV, and so you can kind of just do algebra to deduce the key. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail as well. But the other problems it had too is it had little integrity. The integrity check was not linked to timestamps. So, like, you know, nowadays, if you open up Wireshark, you'll see like a sequence number next to each packet, and that kind of just goes to show, like, that just tells the access point that this packet is tied to this sequence. So if someone tries to send that same exact packet, I don't know, like, wait a second, we've already seen this packet before, we can't do that. Before that, an attacker could intercept a packet, like let's say it's like a PayPal payment or something, like a deposit of $20 or something, and then you could just replay that same packet and keep on, you know, sending yourself $20 as an example. So WP had a lot of problems, but it was like just a very quick kind of. Before it, there was absolutely nothing, but it was still used quite a bit. There we go. So, in each packet, we have the initialization vector and like the actual encrypted data of what's being carried in that packet and your user data. So this would be like a GET request, to google.com, or like a POST request to like login or something. It goes through a CRC32 algorithm, which is cyclical redundancy check. And so that kind of just tries to make sure that like there's no errors in the data. It's not a very good, it's not a very strong algorithm. It got replaced later on, because even though this is supposed to prevent packet tampering, it had a low amount of bits and there were collisions, and so tampering could still take place even with this step. Now for authentication, now this is like the main key of how WP cracking is a thing. So you've got your initialization vector, which is like your number that's used to kind of like encrypt your WEP key. They get added together and put in through an RC4 cipher. And so this is like our streaming algorithm that's fast and simple and easy to develop applications for, but is also really not secure. Then all the data gets XOR'd, and then, you know, we've got our packet that comes out the other end. But if you have a whole bunch of these packets and you can see the IV, and you've got, let's say you have two of the same packets, and you have two of the same IV. you can just solve that like algebraically. Like IV, they're both the same, and you've got a predictable output. So that's kind of where the vulnerability comes from. So this is how it's decrypted. So the IV value from the incoming message it's a little complicated. But at the core, you kind of just need to look at this stuff here. Because when the access point like actually decrypts the message from the client, because both the client and both the access point have the same shared key. And they use that to encrypt and decrypt traffic. So when the router sends the client a message, it's encrypted, client decrypts and sends something back using the same shared key. And the IV is used to decrypt said ciphertext to the shared key. So you really just need this. And it's visible in plain text, which kind of isn't the smartest thing. It was later addressed in WPA. But we'll talk about that next week. WPA in super great detail. So again, then the RC4 algorithm is applied. The streaming algorithm is applied to generate the complete like the full packet. Master key is derived from the IV. Master key is then applied through RC4 to retrieve the full packet in the plain text. You also have your integrity check value from our CRC32 previous algorithm. And so the new generated IC value, which is for this packet, is then compared to the one that was in the last frame. So it just kind of compares to try to see, is this integrity value the same as the last integrity value? And if it is the same, then okay, we pass the packet along. Nothing's been tampered with. But if it's not the same, then we drop the packet. It's been tampered with. There's still ways to get around said CRC32 algorithm because it's very short, so there's collisions, and it's predictable. So you can tamper with it, just like if you have an expected packet, like a GET request to google.com. That's very predictable. You kind of know what that's going to look like, even if it's gone all sorts of layers of encryption. And if you know what your virus.com GET request would look like, you could manipulate the plain text value to have the same IC value after, even though it's different, just because it's short and there's collisions. Is there any questions? Feel free to ask. This is a little bit of the lower level stuff, but we'll just get into the how to cracking part of it. So there's a couple ways to attack WEP. You've got the FMS/Cork method, which is passive, and then you've got the PTW method, which is active. And so passive means you don't interact with the network or the access point at all. And active would be you are directly interacting with the access point. So in an active one, it'll be much faster, but it's loud, and if anyone's paying attention, they could see that you're sending a bunch of ARP packets directly to the router. So the PTW method is built off of what's the FMS Cork method does. And what the FMS Cork method does is it splits the master key into bite-sized chunks. And then it determines the likelihood of each byte being a certain hex value. And it's able to use just statistical analysis. So the FMS part of this is just splitting up the master key into bite-sized chunks and then brute forcing it. And because with WEP, you're able to verify if a byte of the master key is correct or not, just because it's weak, and the researchers have like discovered that you can do that. You can send in a botched authentication request, and it'll tell you like, oh yeah, that byte matches. Don't know about the other ones. So that's what the FMS part is, and it's FMS because that's like the acronym of like the researchers that discovered it. In today's weekly materials, there's like a link to the white paper if you're kind of like curious about how the math and stuff works. But yeah, these guys basically just proved that you could split it up into byte chunks and you could brute force it that way, which made it a lot quicker because then you don't need to brute force, a whole long bit string, just one byte at a time. And then the core part is where some other guy came along and discovered that like, hey, if you have enough packets, you can use the kind of like predictable nature of the RC4 algorithm to kind of get an idea of like a probability of which hex value is more likely to be the correct one for that byte. And so that's how it works together. You collect a whole bunch of packets. It kind of figures out the likelihood that each value would be, and then it just goes through. If AE isn't the right one for byte number 1 of the master key, then it goes through all the other ones that it thinks it is. And the PTW method does the same exact thing here, but it just gets, by doing active stuff, it's able to generate like very, very similar packets. It just basically floods the network with ARP requests, which are 24 bytes. So, it's the same, each packet is the same size, to the same destination, doing like the same thing, and you keep sending. I think it only takes like 12,000 packets because they're pretty much all the same, and all you're trying to do is just trying to get enough packets to where the data is similar, and you've got the initialization vector exposed, because then you can just work backwards. Just like you have your equals of encrypted data plus like your IV times the WEP master key. And if you don't know what that is, and if you don't know what that key is, if you just have two equations, you can work backwards from there. Trying to think. No, yeah, that's pretty much how it works. You guys got any questions? Because now we're just going to go into like actually how the tools work. Yeah, what's up?
So I did have one question about how it guesses which byte it thinks it will be.
So for that, that's like the lower mathematical part. Would be like explained in the white paper. It's just able to, from a large pool of packets, it is able to analyze, because the algorithm is predictable, and because of that predictableness, it can be, predicted that the byte could be, is more likely to be this one than that one, just because, we can compare against all these other packets, and packets that have been generated on your own end. So there's a couple tools. So then, that's all cool and all. Did not change the slide. So that's cool and all, but how do I actually like crack a WEP network? Now, just a disclaimer, WEP is like not used at all. You'll probably not run into it. If you do run into it, it's like probably a honeypot, just because it's so easy to crack. The only reason you'd probably see it is if someone wants you to crack it, and then just like see what you do. That's what a honeypot is. But next week we'll be talking about WPA and addressing all of the improvements WPA has made. So that's why we're talking about web today. There's an easy mode GUI one called Fern if you are kind of like scared of the command line. You just got like simple prompts, up your network card, scan for networks, and it handles it from there. There's an automated command line one called Wi-Fi, which is pretty cool. But I don't suggest doing either of those. Today, we'll do it manually, which isn't that difficult either. It's just like a couple of commands. Y'all have your paired security installs and stuff, right? And y'all should be good to go. We've got 2 routers here ready to be owned. One's called Alex iPhone, and one's called Joe iPhone. So y'all should see them. This command, the first command will just list Wi-Fi networks. Take note of the channel and the BSS ID, like maybe just like copy them to a notepad or something. Use the second command, IP address, or ADDR, it's like shortened for address. To find the network interface name, you want to choose your wireless one, which should like look like WLAN 0 probably. Sometimes it can vary. I know in this thing it's got like a super long name, like WLSP0. So it could look different, but if you got a question, if you're not sure about which one is your Wi-Fi card, just ask. And then step number 3 is where you actually intercept packets that are originating from the router. So I've got this laptop here that's just watching a Twitch stream, so there should be a steady stream of packets that you can obtain. So AeroDumpNG is just a tool, is a network monitoring tool. It's good for WEP, WPA. It's very robust. -C specifies the channel that you'll be like listening to. -W is for writing, and so I just have out because like that's just a general file name. And then specify the BSS ID, which is like the MAC address of the actual access point, and then your network interface. And then from there, it's just going to start, tracking packets. And try to wait until you have about 10,000 packets. It'll have here it doesn't say packets, but this is what it is. Amount of data is like amount of packets, and so 10,000 is a good number to shoot for. Sometimes it might require more, sometimes you can get away with less. And then after you've got enough packets, aircrack NG out, and then you're fine. And then aircrack will just try to look at all those packets, find IV numbers that are the same, and then just try to work backwards from there using the methods that like I described earlier. So yeah, you should need about 10,000. Could take about seven-ish minutes to gather that many packets. Y'all need any help? Let me know. I would just like meander around. WPA is a lot more interesting to talk about though. If you want to go easy mode, you can still use Wi-Fi, like if you, or Wi-Fi or Ferd Cracker.
I use data, right? I don't know if someone can make any difference. When I type it in, it doesn't show a flicker. Is it?
I think it's because it's in a VM. Yeah. Now for VirtualBox, I know there's like a little thing to just kind of pass the to change the network mode from. You can have it pass through. I think by default it uses an NAT, which like kind of like isolates the. It feeds your host network connection into the virtual machine, so it has connectivity, but it can't reach outwards. There's bridge mode that you can put it in, but that would be in the player settings. I'm really not too familiar with doing that. Alright. Pretty sure you can poke around and find it or
I'll just go, because I was able to, that's for step 2, which one would be the network interface for this one?
So, local LO is local, so that's not a network interface, that's just like a placeholder for your local computer. Because some software, like protocols, just need to send data to your direct client, so it uses that. And then ETHO is Ethernet. So you don't have a wireless card in your Kali installed because of it's in a virtual machine. And I'm very much assuming it's using a NAT interface. If you power off that virtual machine and go to the settings, you should be able to change it.
So,
just like from here, like close down. So, yeah. Usually you want to handle.
Actually, wait, should I power off?
You could do either. It's just you want to power off through the virtual machine software rather than like from inside the virtual machine. Generally speaking.
Yeah. Thank you.
You want? I also have just a lot of Google Calendar. Right? Like VMware groups can be like annoying and doesn't actually work. You can just plug that in and
Because I've been using this for the CCM course. That's why. So, like, I know you guys are Cali. I just was using this because that's what I was using.
yeah, that's fine. I mean, Parrot and Cali are super similar.
Yeah.
They're really just, they look a little different. I've had less issues with Parrot, so I can just recommend I've had some really dumb stuff with Cali. It's some mystery problem that I don't understand. Did you change the
I just rebooted it.
source?
That sounds like.
I mean, messed up paying $2 for that shit, whatever.
Man, at the vending machines they got over in that like Phoenix Nest or whatever, they're trying to get you to pay $1.75 per show, and it pisses me off.
Dude, community, you know what's a little vending machine? Just 75 cents.
Yeah, just
3/4. Man, trying to charge us $1.75. It's just not right. It's just not right. Yeah, try the IP address again. Just yeah, same output. Do the same thing. Just power off the or power off the or close the virtual machine.
oh,
And then go into settings.
I don't know who's Joe.
Joe Mama. So I reckon if yeah. Yeah, that's just settings.
I heard it. Yeah, you're right.
Waiting for something.
So,
Are we in an hour just so that?
I'm pretty sure.
To run our, like a testing for our.
You want to do bridge,
project.
and then you want to replicate the physical network.
Command.
If that
Yeah.
doesn't work, then I guess try host only, but I'm
Fairly certain that should be what works. And if it doesn't, then I probably will look for you to follow.
Thank you.
So we're going to.
IP address?
Control shift escape.
Yeah, I try to keep it pretty beginner friendly. We don't need a super big security background, just a little bit of. Tell me. I feel like you're probably having the same issue. It's just the step two. Yeah, okay, so because you're in a virtual machine, it's the same thing. How a virtual machine handles networking is your host gets access to the internet, and then it just passes that link into here. The virtual machine itself cannot see wireless networks by default. By default, they use NAT because with virtual machines, usually you kind of just want the machine to be isolated from the rest of the hardware system, and so that's why that's by default. But I love a virtual machine. And then just go to your virtual box settings. Yeah, what is it? Network.
Yeah, I'm still getting there. So which location is this? Because like with this, it's assuming that there are two on one of those locations. That's the thing that I even know. Or,
Awesome. Yes, I still have actually use it's a good need to run hardware. Do we need to? Can you boot up of 2 USB? HP computers are F9 access to them. So you do a full power off, and then when you power on, just tap F9 to open the boot. So when you pull it, just hit that button.
keep going over it.